Good morning. My name is Emily Rooney. I'm with Agricultural Council of California, and I have a few slides. It's my understanding that we have them here. We think. Oh, great. Thanks. I'll wait a few minutes. Thank you. I am co-chairing the WDR subcommittee with Bob Gore of the Gualco Group, who's here on my left. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this project. We are looking forward to improving the compliance process, and I do think that this is a good opportunity for some meaningful reform in this process here. Let's see if I can get these. Hello.
Maybe have to put it up there so we can see this.
Yeah, maybe it's. No?
Scroll forward.
Oh, there we are. Okay. Our committee work, we have had one formal meeting at this point. That was on November 28th. And we have about 87 or so participants on our official stakeholder list. There's over 2,000 WDRs, so it's sort of a drop in the bucket in terms of folks that are participating. Our immediate outreach, myself and Bob's, is in food and ag, and my membership are small farmer-owned businesses to some of the world's best-known brands, including food processing and that sort of thing. So I've been doing some additional outreach to others on the stakeholder list that are outside of agriculture. I am a little concerned that we might be a little too ag-heavy, but we're working on that. We're still getting anecdotal information, even as recent as yesterday, from some of those other stakeholders. So we're still collecting data on cost, basically.
Emily, what other groups would you like to be involved in? Could we help in terms of outreach?
Well, I've put a lot of emails and phone calls out. I think I'm okay right now. There's a County of LA, somebody from the Navy, Fish and Game. I've had that feedback trickling in. I'm finding, even with my own membership, that a lot of them are still trying to figure out what their costs are and what the actions are, because a lot of them go through consultants. So there's a delay in getting that information to us.
Okay.
We also have several irrigation districts and
Introduce yourself.
waste managers as well. I'm Bob Gore from the Gualco Group.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the offer stands.
Thank you, appreciate it. So what I tried to do is come up with sort of overarching themes of what we're hearing from our stakeholder group. The first one, if we simplify the process enough, staff can take a more targeted approach by looking at bad actors and encouraging technology while improving the environment. We're hearing that new technology requires new demand for studies, new permits, and increased costs when the underlying intent is to improve the environment. So how do we sort of help facilitate that? New regulations and revisions must be outcome-oriented versus process-based. We've heard that here today already. The compliance for this permit is immensely complex, and that seems to be the number one challenge in getting lack of feedback from folks. There's individuals more than one individual that has stated to me that they think that this timeline to have something that's meaningful completed by June is unrealistic. I think it's ambitious, but anyway, there's just a lot of folks dragging feet because they don't know if they can get meaningful reform done by June.
Is that related? Sorry to interrupt, but is that related to the fact that you're you're projecting the potential cost of compliance versus going back in time and looking at existing WDR?
I haven't asked that specific question, but I do have one example of the dairy industry that has looked back in time, and we'll talk about those costs a little bit. So,
good.
And I'm still doing some digging on that, so I'm trying to pull folks out. And I just want to underscore this last point. Under no circumstances anybody asked for relaxation of environmental standards. Again, just to reiterate, most of it's paperwork, basically. Examples of excessive cost compliance, going back to the pie that was mentioned earlier, the biggest costs are probably with sampling and reporting, and then the creation of the annual report. The sampling is completed monthly, quarterly, and annually. Then there's creation of plans, there's nutrient management plans, waste management plans. There's a creation of an annual report. And I'm going to leave an example of a study for the dairy industry that CDFA performed. I'm going to leave that with the board members and with their staff. There was a study completed in 2010, and it goes through the costs of compliance for dairies on the WDRs. And basically what it comes down to is it's a $15,000 cost per 1,000 cow dairy, and And basically, I'll just tick off some of the items. On page 6 of the report, which you'll see, there's a box that outlines all the items required for the annual report. There's 3 sections. There's a general section, a groundwater reporting section, and then a stormwater monitoring results section. And in the general section, there's 15 required items. I'll go through the first 5 for time's sake. They want information on crops harvested, an annual dairy facility assessment, number and types of animals, whether in open confinement or housed under roof, estimated amount of total manure and processed wastewater generated by the facility, estimated amount of total manure and processed wastewater applied with calculations of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and total salt content. And those types of data requirements are sprinkled through just that first section, and a lot of them have this additional requirement for nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and total salt content. So there's probably actually like 22 or so requirements just in that first piece, and then that doesn't even get really to the lab results, which are in Part B and C. So it's a very extensive annual report, and it could probably be revamped in a way where it becomes a more useful management tool for dairies, for environmental management, as opposed to just getting paperwork and data into the board. So going back to the cost piece, though, while it costs, according to CDFA, approximately $15,000 per 1,000 cow dairy, my food processors are telling me that it's roughly about $200,000 to $300,000 annually to comply with this process. And I'm in the process of, I've pushed back with them, trying to get them to bring me the actual data. So
I'm sorry, Emily, is that just the reporting?
that's my understanding. That's my understanding. So. But again, I've pushed back. This includes the cost of consultants too, so it's not just the paperwork. So those the consultants obviously have a hefty fee as well. So again, but that's just anecdotal information, and I'm hoping to document that. The goal is to have all this done by June. Let's see here. Let's see. Next slide. Outstanding issues for the existing regulations. Again, the annual report's not useful. I'm hoping that the stakeholder community can work with the water board staff to come up with a more environmental management type of tool, so that you know, a regulated entity doesn't have to hire a consultant to fill out the paperwork and then hire the same consultant to come up with another route to have sort of to achieve the outcomes that are desired. Because right now it's sort of two approaches that are going on. So that's probably one of the first things. You know, enforcement actions, again, should be focused on improving the environment as opposed to paperwork violations. And then this is a question that has come up through the stakeholder process. You know, if there's certain plans that are met or created and the standards for these reports are met, are there additional requirements necessary for the purpose of the law? And what are the benefits provided by the other reports? So it's just taking sort of a comprehensive look at the various reports and sort of, you know, are they meaningful? What are they addressing? And if not, is there something else we should be looking at? Here's a handful of suggested changes that we have here. For industries that do not have representative sampling programs, you know, we could create them on an industry-wide basis or by watershed, depending on sort of the situation. Again, there's no silver bullet, sort of depends on what's going on in the region. That way we can be more strategic in frequency and location of samplings. Again, going back to the annual report, create it more as a tool for environmental management. Maybe we can do some spot checks with self-monitoring for purposes of data collection. You know, and then field trips, you know, going back to one of Danny's earlier points about staff gaining a better understanding of, you know, the issues and the existing and emerging technologies. I know that we have a few sacrificial lambs that probably be more than happy to host some staff so that they have a better understanding of what's going out in the field, what's going on out in the field, so that there's a more meaningful relationship there. Again, the ombudsman, you know, and having somebody that understands the coexisting regulations and other things that are going on in other agencies, and so there's more of a comprehensive look at these regulations probably makes sense. And then an electronic permitting process. This would be pretty useful for new permits specifically, so folks know where their permit process is in the approval process, and that would be helpful there as well.
Before you move on, Emily, let me ask Karen. This idea about field trips for staff. I know that we have is it called the Water Academy?
The Training Academy.
The Training
correct.
Academy. Well, the Air Board has an Air Academy. So, does the Training Academy have a process in place where they would work with members of the regulated community to arrange for some channels of communication and education?
Internships.
Well, not quite. I mean, I know that the Training Academy arranges for people to come and speak and provide courses to staff, but have we considered or have we had any sort of speakers, say, like from the various regulatory community, come in to present certain information or conduct tours or something like what Emily is suggesting here?
For a number of the classes, many of the classes do bring in members of the regulated community, members of NGO, et cetera, as a part of the classroom experience. To my knowledge, the training that is conducted for the Training Academy has limited, although there is some field trip experience, and both in the water quality and the water rights area, but not necessarily of the caliber that Emily is talking about. And I think the Training Academy and Margie Young's in particular could work with those individuals representing broader categories of regulation to arrange that kind of experience. And I would be happy to connect Margie and Emily. And Eric's sitting back there as well, and I'm sure he could convene that meeting too.
Thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to that. I wrote it in my notes. So going on to next steps, again, we're trying to document the compliance costs for industries and regions that are not already documented. Again, I'm going back to my membership, and then others that I've been getting this information from tangentially. We want to suggest strategies for representative sampling and improve sampling strategies in other areas for those groups that do not have that already. We have this issue with, there's sort of this immediate burden of the regulation itself, and people seem to be focused on that, and it's just, it's the sampling and the paperwork and all of that sort of stuff, I guess. And so we're having a hard time looking at longer term solutions because there seems to be so much in our face right now, I think. So that's going to be a charge of ours, obviously, and hopefully we can get to that. But that may be a longer-term solution to find longer-term solutions. Anyway, and then we want to be able to reevaluate the fee structure so that it's consistent with the workload once the changes are implemented. I think that's part of phase 3 that we've spoken about earlier here this morning. And we strongly would support an implementation plan and a check back in the April 9th meeting as well. And if there's anything else that Bob may want to add.
Well, as a former journalist, I'll do 5 quick headlines. I'm Bob Gore from the Gualco Group, and this is what we're hearing from our stakeholders, and I've taken care to review the stakeholder remarks from those who are not ag, so this is additional input for you to frame the issue as we proceed. One is incent innovation for environmental protection. There aren't enough incentives in terms of staff encouragement. The second thought is, and I'm stealing here from Paul Martin, outcomes, not process. The third is participate in Cal EPA's permit consolidation exercise that's about to begin. And the fourth is removing redundancy and in terms of both regulations and interagency requirements. And the last is customer-based budgeting and zero-based permitting.
So I'm going to show my ignorance here. What is Cal EPA's upcoming permit consolidation process?
When the director of the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development presented to the Board of Agriculture earlier this month he mentioned that Cal EPA's departments have gotten together under a 1995 statute to do an exercise for consolidated permitting, and they're about ready to select 2 or 3 pilot permits.
Tom, the things we learned.
Yes.
Yes, well, me as well. So we'll certainly check into it, but I haven't heard about it.
Thank you, Bob. That was very intriguing.
You're welcome.
Oh, now I get to show my ignorance. No, on waste discharge requirements, it's a broad area, right? And you know, are we? And then staff, please chime in. But we're not trying to narrow this at all. We have, you know, in our report, resource alignment, we really include things like the landfill WDRs and community septic system WDRs with no yeah. So, and so do you feel confident you've hit, you know, the full range that they're affected?
Not at this point, no, and that gets back to my earlier comments. Not at this point.
Good, because yeah, they have their own, you know, the landfill group. I mean,
Right.
the regions have their own sets of requirements, but again, it relates to other agency requirements such as DTSC, you know, and so it's hard teasing out our cost of compliance. We go.
One thing just to point out, when we presented the work plan last year, one of the areas in particular that we did overtly exclude from this Phase 2 effort were, for example, municipal solid waste landfills regulated under Title 27. So there were certain types of activities that we said for now we're going to pull out. But the WDR group in particular has a very challenging task because of the diversity of facilities that are regulated through that tool.
Yeah, no, I
And
really respect that.
Excuse me, Mr. Moore, we do have 2 major waste managers involved in this thus far. So.
Waste Management has attended the meetings, Waste Management Inc., but again...
That would be one, yeah.
Yeah.
I also wanted to comment on something Emily said about some people expressing concern about the June timeframe being unrealistic. Well, I always shoot and push for people to do things as quickly and as efficiently as possible, but I think, you know, it's pretty obvious today that we've got groups in multiple levels of progress. And while I certainly hope that we will still keep the June deadline in terms of presenting some, you know, recommendations to the board, I don't necessarily expect that, you know, all the pieces will be in place by June. I mean, I think the discussion today has been very helpful. I think the work that you've all been engaged in will lead to some good, hopefully, recommendations that could be implemented in the short term. But I think, you know, there will be something that will need more fleshing out, more development, more discussion. And so if, you know, what you're able to present to us in June are foundations for continuing work, I, for one, would be extremely grateful for that as well. So I, you know, at this time, I'm not suggesting that we back away from June in terms of getting recommendations to the board, but realistically, I think we all recognize that there will be groups in different stages, and the recommendations will be in different stages. And if there is, you know, to be work to continue forward after June, I certainly expect that as well.
Yeah, and I appreciate those comments, and I couldn't agree more. It seems to me, particularly with the list of short-term potential issues, we could certainly get maybe some of this knocked out by June. And for the others, you know, yes, I like your terminology here, foundation for ongoing work, and certainly there will be quite a bit of that, I'm guessing. So just by the feedback I've gotten. So by all means, yeah, we're on board, and I'm going to try to encourage those to still participate in the process. But yeah.
And I think we've heard from at least Jeff and Emily today that, you know, the fees issues are still coming up. So as much as Karen would like to have a clear distinction between phases 2 and 3, I would expect that at some point later on this year there will be some mingling of those 2 phases.
And I would also like to point out that it's at the beginning of